Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Coming to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, Garrett Jones and Will. Guys, how are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Yes, doing well. I thought I was on the wrong podcast, though, because I looked and I didn't recognize John with the clean-shaven look there. I was like, wait, where are we?
I'm John's evil twin.
Beautiful.
Oh, no, wait. It's if you have the beard.
No, you have to have the goatee.
The goatee is the evil twin. Okay.
So wait a minute. We've been having a podcast with an evil twin? Wait a minute. Or are we in the alternate universe? Oh, no.
I've got to be stuck in some kind of limbo because I've got some kind of 5 o'clock shadow going at 8.
There you go. You're in the world between worlds. So there you are. All right.
Well, we are, of course, going through our weekly look episode by episode of the Andor series. And this week it is so far what I think has been the best episode so far. They just keep getting better and better in my opinion. Episode 6. Guys, I mean,
the Eye. Episode called The Eye.
The Eye, yes.
Oh my gosh. Probably one of the best uses of Lucasfilm style CGI I have seen in a very long time. Oh my gosh. If for those of you who haven't seen it, holy cow, you are in for some eye candy. I kid you not. It was a beautifully shot episode.
So we should just get this out of the way. There will be spoilers ahead.
Yeah, don't listen to this podcast if you haven't seen it.
If you have not watched it, first of all, why not? It's been how long? How long came out Wednesday? So yeah, it's at this point, if you haven't seen it, you probably aren't going to see it. But yeah.
So some predictions. Did our I don't remember one of us said that not many are getting out of this alive.
Yeah, that was true. I mean,
we were pretty much
surprises.
I think everybody who was supposed to die died. Although there was one character death that shocked the heck out of me, and that was Skeen.
Oh well,
that came out.
Yeah, the way he went, I was a bit shocked. Yeah, but then again, when you think about how Cassian kind of off the security officer at the first episode, it was kind of like sudden and without much warning, just boom. It was just this one was a moment of calm that we weren't expecting.
So I want to talk a little. We'll go into more detail as always. We kind of bounce around. The one character that I want to talk about a little bit, just because of how it was portrayed as an Imperial officer, was that Imperial. I think he was an engineer. He was the one that when they come in, he was the one that
was he looking at the telescope or
no? He was the one when they all burst in and they have the general or the admiral, whoever he was, the head of the base, hostage, and they have all his family sitting there. He's the one that pulled the pistol and said, "Let the family go." That was a very I think. And someone else mentioned this in another show, where in the past it's always been very black and white. Imperials are either mustache twirling villains, or they are people that are in the midst of changing from being an Imperial to a rebel, like someone like Callus in Rebels, where they're going through that change. Where this is someone that he dies, he ends up getting shot. But you can still see, even though he's an Imperial, he still has some sort of honor about him. He's
a little bit of a moral code.
Yeah. And it's like it almost shows you just how that evil can just seep into everyday life.
Well, what's important to one of the things that this show is sort of doing in its own way is kind of establishing the fact that like you said, there is this gray area.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, like, look at that conversation that was happening with the IMP woman and her assistant in the previous episode. I mean, these people. I mean, on the one hand, they're simply trying to get to the bottom of something. They see a problem and they're trying to solve it. But on the other hand, they're working for this machine that is the Empire. But I think a lot of these people get caught up in their own jobs and careers and moving up in it, that they don't always see the big picture. And that's where. But I mean, there, that whole scene, it felt like things were reversed.
Yeah.
The one thing I like about the Andor series overall is the way that it paints characters and the different factions in lights that we haven't really grasped before. Because, I mean, growing up, you always think the Rebel Alliance, good guys, Empire is bad. And don't get me wrong, the Empire and the way that they operate is awful. It's very exploitative of the various cultures and planets and worlds that they go to. And it's obviously led by Palpatine, who is horrible. No doubts about that. But we're looking at what we're seeing is that whole thing that we've grown up with was a romanticized understanding of a very black and white good versus evil. And there are shades of gray throughout this. I mean, I don't remember where I heard it, but it's like one man's hero is another man's monster or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're seeing that. So like, and Andor operates in those shades of gray and those in between, kind of like I do with the facial hair, where
world between worlds. Okay.
World between worlds. But he's operating in this part of the galaxy where there is no clear definition. Now, he does have a strict moral compass. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shot Skeen for being willing to betray everybody just to take all the money for himself. I think that sticks out because he does have that code of conduct that he is willing to support the people that he needs to support.
Yeah.
But the thing that strikes me as interesting for this is that we see people on both sides who look like they could be the good guy or the bad guy. Like Skeen, we got this opportunity, in the last couple of episodes to get to know him a little bit better, and it turns out it's just a big steaming pile of
Oh yeah. On that, before you continue, what are your thoughts on this? When he says, right before he gets shot by Cassian, he says, "I don't have a brother." Now, do you think it wasn't really clarified, and there's been a lot of discussion on the internet one way or the other? Do you think he truly didn't have a brother and that whole story was a lie? Or do you think that this is just how he is because his brother no longer exists? Or does it matter?
I think what we get is a character who is very much he's trying very hard to be what's the word I'm looking for? He's a survivor. And that's how survivors operate. There's no real dedication to truth or honor or anything like that. The first thing that comes to mind when I see a character like this is if you've ever seen the movie Predators from 2010, Lawrence Fishburne's character, he's been on this game preserve for quite some time. And while he shows some level of aggressive hospitality to the main characters, he eventually tries to suffocate them with smoke inside his shelter so that he could he can kill them very easily without them ever putting up a fight, only to steal their stuff because he's a survivor. He's a scavenger. And I see Skeen as that kind of a character because, for the last few episodes, he is a character that is wanting to survive by any means necessary. And while Cassian understands that because he's had to scrape and look for every possibility for survival on his own, he still has that moral compass in play. And I think what we're going to see between now, because if you notice that moral compass seemed to be gone in Rogue One, and I think we're seeing how that kind of dissolves because it came back to him towards the end of that film.
Right.
He reminds me of not Cassian, Beckett.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's very, very much Beckett.
Yeah.
Very opportunistic.
Yeah. Now,
yeah.
Another thing another show, not that I want to constantly compare to other things, but that I feel that this whole series kind of had a little bit of a similar vibe to. I mean, I'll call it a vibe. I wouldn't call it direct, influence. But have either of you ever watched 24?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if setting aside the whole like minute for minute, hour by hour, shot in real time, quote unquote, idea, which really that was the shtick of 24. The character of Kiefer Sutherland, Jack Bauer, was kind of a morally gray CTU agent, quote unquote good guy, but he did some pretty horrible, nasty, awful things, and some of his fellow CTU agents did. And sometimes there were things that they just, they did certain things to, end the lives of these innocent people to save hundreds or thousands or millions of these people, and they had to live with that. They didn't show them not, suffering for that, but it was just, it did harken back to that for me. And and on top of that, just the way these episodes kind of built up, like generally speaking, I mean, most episodes had like some level of climax, like this series does, except that most of the climaxes that we got to were definitely, like we were calling it, slow burn. So it was more of a dramatic moment, not so much an action oriented moment. This episode delivered on all sides. It just gave us everything. And, it kind of felt like almost like the end of a mini season, like they were working their way up to this mission. The mission happened, and now we're going to see what happens next and where do we go from here. So, but,
and again, I have to remember, like, there's so many character names. I have trouble remembering all of them. I thought it was interesting, the young kid going through that crisis of faith.
Oh, was that Karis?
I think so.
Yeah, Karis Nemec. Only to be crushed by capitalism.
Yeah, literally.
Literally crushed by money.
But yeah, I mean, just him being the true of all of them. He's kind of put out there as the true believer. He has the manifesto. He's kind of in many ways, I think I heard one person said he was the Thomas Paine of the group. The true believer, the guy who's not necessarily the zealot, but he's the he's got the all of the ideas that what he wants to do, and then everyone else has their own little reasons for why they're there. But but him having, I thought that was a really interesting, and then Cassian's response to him, that is like, do we matter? What we're doing here, do we matter? And he says to the Empire, you don't matter. You are nothing to the Empire. You're less than nothing to the Empire. You're just another number.
Well, and I think that stands out because the Empire is this huge thing. It's this huge entity, in the galaxy. And while they'll look at the Rebel Alliance or any one particular individual as insignificant, it's the same thing with, when you have, like, say, an anthill, and one little ant, unless you're highly allergic, it's not going to affect you. But when you have tons of ants swarming up your leg and biting you in unison, that's where you start having the problem.
Yeah.
And Nemec is one ant in the anthill. But as the Rebel Alliance is picking up steam in over the next few cycles or years or whatever, that they're going to become a much larger problem. And while individually Nemec is nothing, he is representative of the potential danger of what happens when you have this crushing hold on the galaxy and you don't let people live freely.
Well, was it that Leia said in episode 4, the stronger you tighten your grip, the more systems will slip through your grasp.
Yeah, that's I've been hearing a lot of references.
But you see, like, all these different people, like you have that kid, the true believer. You have a former stormtrooper. who's probably he probably left because he's seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You have, Andor coming in as like the mercenary, who's doesn't really have a true stake in it.
Right.
Other than, I was like, I hate the Empire. I just want to do, make a few credits and get back, maybe take a few pot shots at him. But, and then, I don't know what have they talked about what the two ladies, what their.
Well, there was a Vel and it was the blonde, Cinta. And then Cinta. And they said they're the only other two others that survived. Yeah. I guess Vel's going to be the one who delivers the payload, and Cinta ended up just kind of watching the eye go by with the
she's kind of stuck on the planet right now. I'm not sure what her.
I did not see Gorn get shot. I just missed it. I mean, it was so fast that I just they didn't make much of it. I was like, did he go?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the other thing is, if you weren't paying attention, the Commandant had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Because he put so much strain into doing all that heavy lifting. Like, we're talking about a guy who probably hasn't done any heavy lifting
ever.
And you can see how something like that, especially with that little boy, his son, how that could lead to him even hating the rebels.
Yeah.
Because they killed his father.
Rebels are terrorists.
Depends on how you view it. You made the comment, one man's, freedom, one man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorist.
So no, it does. It's a challenging show, and it does. There's a lot of what would you do questions that come by. Each scene was a new what would you do. You have this. And you don't stop to think. Like, one of the things that they've done a lot in this show is to really expand upon not just the Mon Mothma having a family, and then you come into this episode, you have the Commandant J-Hold, who we don't really like him. The minute you walk in and you see him in a scene, and he's just referring to the locals in such a derogatory way that it's just horrible. So you've certainly established that you don't like this guy.
Yeah,
he's got nothing likable about him, and then he comes home and he realized that even he has a wife and a son, even though the son was a little bit, didn't want to wear the Imperial outfit. It was definitely shade. There could be, on the one hand, you said there could be shades of him growing hatred towards the rebels, but then again, it could also be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, and this is where the scope of science fiction comes into play, just from a storytelling perspective. Science fiction has always been used to explore those philosophical questions of right and wrong, and looking at those shades of gray that we were talking about earlier, and exploring those different avenues, because it's really kind of a neat thing that we're seeing this being done in Star Wars on a much bigger scale. It's much more upfront with this idea of who's really the good guy, who's really the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. This kind of this whole thing of kind of viewing the Empire in a different light. There was a game that came out back in the 90s called Star Wars TIE Fighter. And what's that?
I said I had that.
Yes.
Could never get it to work on the computer.
It was a really good game, but the one I got came with a little mini novella. And it told a story of a man who joins the Empire and becomes the TIE Fighter pilot, and it talks about how it happened. And it was a really cool story. It was basically, in a nutshell, he was on this planet. He was a swoop bike racer on this planet that was racked by civil war, and the Empire comes in and basically forces the two sides to come together and negotiate. So in his mind, he looks at the Empire as a savior. They saved his planet from the civil war that was tearing the planet apart and brought order to chaos. So you have this whole, it just depends on how you look at it.
Well, look at from Obi-Wan, the alien creature that gave him a ride.
Yeah,
he had the Empire logo, painted on the back of his ship or his vehicle, And he's like, "Oh, nothing wrong with a little bit of order around here."
That shows like a different view of even the stormtroopers, because if you notice when the stormtroopers talk to him, they call them by name. They're like, "Hey, how you doing, buddy? How you taking the load up to wherever?" "Oh yeah." So I think it's especially with the stormtroopers. It's easy to sometimes just put them in maskless, faceless automatrons who
I think that I honestly think that we've started to see that explored with Finn, with the First Order. So, but yeah, I agree. I think that,
I kind of do. I mean, I've seen a few people complain that we haven't seen stormtroopers. I like the fact that we haven't seen stormtroopers yet. I do. I like that idea that we haven't seen troopers.
Yeah, we've seen the traditional helmeted TIE fighter pilots from inside their cockpits.
That was cool. Fun to them climbing in. That was a cool
climbing down, because I mean, for the longest time, it's been like, how did they get into those? How did they? I mean,
the most you could see is from cutaway versions in like illustrated books and stuff of how they would climb into the ship.
Yeah.
So they were faithful to that, which I appreciated.
Yeah, climbing through the top, and I love they even kept the cockpits and the heads up display was right from the original trilogy. I mean,
they know that people are watching with a fine-tooth comb.
Oh yeah.
And those simple little things are easy fan service ideas, that they can do. And and they did it for Rogue One, so there's no reason to think that they wouldn't continue that for the TV show. And that was great. I want to call out something else I thought was very interesting, and that was in the Senate towards the very end of the episode, when Mon Mothma was delivering her plea about the issue she was having with that one situation. I forget what it was, but how, first of all, there was hardly anybody in the Senate, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And then how they all stopped because they got this information about what happened. So she, which I get that's kind of what the point of the episode, or that moment in the episode, was. But I also wanted to point out something that I thought was interesting, that in addition to there not being as many people there weren't very many aliens.
Yeah.
And that's something that they haven't really talked about now I know that most likely that is a budgetary concern. You don't need to, create a whole bunch of masked characters or CGI characters for literally a 10-second scene on a TV show budget. So I get that. But I also thought it was very interesting that, we don't see many aliens in the Empire.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, going back to the expanded universe literature, Palpatine was notorious for, publicly when he was a senator, when he was Chancellor of the Republic, he was very open about interacting with other alien species, but sticking with canon, and I think we're seeing subtle hints of that with this particular episode and this scene particularly, is that Palpatine was not a fan of non-humans.
Right. And that's what I was getting at. Yes.
Yeah, and so we see that being applied, that you have all these different worlds that are not human worlds, and they're losing their place at the table.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think also that scene also kind of showed the Senate kind of losing its, having lost its power.
Right.
And, with nobody there, you can see how when, in just a few years' time, when the Senate will be dissolved, how no one will bat an eye, because they'll be like, well, it didn't really do anything anyway. It was a useless, it was a toothless organization anyway. So,
right.
You kind of slowly see it lose its power and, kind of fade into obscurity.
Right. Until the last remnants have been swept away in just a few short years.
5 years.
So, right. So it's just kind of a fascinating thing to see how kind of this little thing that starts kind of, and how all of a sudden it's blending in. It's not blending in. It's becoming kind of it's overshadowing a lot of else what's going on. All of a sudden the Senate's talking about it. All of a sudden, Lucen hears about it from his customer. So
yeah, well, even the ISB, they have bring in a special, have a special meeting.
Special meeting.
Well,
you're not going home. You're not going home. I want everything by midnight. I'm like, oh my, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is, before it seems like, any of these little attacks or anything like that have been insignificant to the point that, nobody's, this seems like it's the first big attack that's from a rebel cell that's got the Empire, like, kind of perking their ears up, thinking, okay, this is something, this is significant.
Right. You got their attention. Yeah. Unfortunately, you got their attention.
Unfortunately,
yeah, you know what I mean.
There's good news and there's bad news.
Yes.
The good news is we got their attention. The bad.
Yep, there it is. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's that double-edged sword, and I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So, can anybody recall any other kind of tidbits, Easter eggs? I mean, this show is very subtle in their Easter eggs, which I like.
It is. I mean, other than seeing the TIE fighters.
Some of the sound effects I do appreciate.
Yeah, like I said, this like even the when the TIE fighter, you see in the cockpit, and the TIE fighters got it, got a lock on and made that. That noise was, and of course the iconic TIE fighter noise. I mean, no, I don't think very few ships in sci-fi fantasy have that iconic where you hear it. And like I could not see it. I could just hear the noise of it. That whine. I'd be like, "That's a TIE fighter. That's a TIE fighter."
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think there's one of the things I really appreciate about this one is just the attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, while I've not been a fan of the blaster rifles that look like AK-47s, one of the things I've really appreciated is the fact that the creators of the show could have easily just ignored whatever was being chanted or whatever language was being used by the Aldani people, the Aldani natives.
Yeah.
But they didn't skimp on that. And so it made this random group of people who don't say much of anything, who don't really do anything other than hike up the mountain and watch the show. You get, I mean, just the fact that they are having these conversations in a language that nobody is speaking,
right,
without any subtitles. All it says is like in the closed captions is Aldani language or speaking in Aldani, and that's
now they did have a closed cap whenever the chieftain was talking to the commandant,
right?
Yeah. And they would have but whenever they were chanting and singing, they didn't have
And so I thought that was really kind of a neat touch because you get that sense that you're an outsider watching this spectacle alongside them, and you don't understand the significance of it for them, but you recognize there is a significance.
Now, speaking of that, have you noticed in the last I think 3 episodes, we have not returned to Andor's home planet?
Right.
We have not seen that. We haven't had any flashbacks. Do you think we're done with flashbacks, or do you think that we'll get? Because it seemed really odd how it ended like there. We don't have any real closure of.
Well, you still got the rest of. You got 6 more episodes plus an entire season. So is it going to be done? Who knows? It's hard to say. I will say I did get a little tired of the chant. I was like, learn a new chant. Come on. No, but no, not really. It was fine. But I will say this, guys. I'm not loving the music. I know I'm a lone voice in that sometimes, but I'm not loving this music. Of all the new TV series, I just am not. I think the music, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, I think the music is definitely pushing the story in a very minimalistic and different type of way than any of the other shows that we've had so far, or movies.
Well,
and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just not my thing. It's just not something that I prefer.
Well,
and that's
Star Wars has always been known for its more bombastic musical scores. And this is, I mean, while we have some of that, especially like in the action sequence in episode 3, where you have those driving guitar sounds, for the most part, we're not getting the bombastic feel that we have with previous seasons.
I'm going to disagree with you there in terms of bombastic. I think Star Wars has been more what I refer to with Star Wars. Yeah, there's been a lot of bombastic moments. You're right about that. But I think what I'm talking about more is leitmotif, is like where you have a theme that is associated with a character, and it's a trend. And I might have talked about this in previous episodes or previous discussions of other shows. But there's a trend over the last like 20 years, really, maybe 30 years, that's kind of faded away from that, which is fine. I mean, that's okay. It's just, it's nice to have a theme. It doesn't have to be a huge, blaring, bombastic theme. It can be a very subtle theme. Look at Yoda's theme. Look at the Force theme. That they were using for any number of Jedi over the past 45 years. Yes, moments can be very big, but a lot of times it was just very subtle. Look at all the music that took place with Luke and Yoda on Dagobah during Empire Strikes Back. That stuff was very subtle, but yet still had a thematic quality to it that I felt I'm just not hearing it here. Although I do appreciate that the opening segment with the Andor scene is different every week. Now I'm like, I do find myself, okay, what's it going to be this week? So I like that. I like that they vary it up a bit. So nothing again. I mean, I think what's going on in the terms of the score is helping to enhance the drama of the story, which is a good thing. It's just as a score by itself, I'm not going to go out and listen to it.
It's not a very memorable.
Yes, thank you.
Score. I can recall most of the key moments from say the music in the prequel trilogy, or especially the original trilogy, has so many iconic pieces of music, and even the Mandalorian has music. Like, you hear those first few bars and the pan flute, and it's just like, okay, yeah, I can now continue hearing that in my head as an earworm. None of these pieces are earworms.
Like, there's another. I'm going to go off Star Wars for a minute, but have either of you been watching She-Hulk?
Yes.
Sadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry if you don't like it. We've been loving it, but the last episode there was a very subtle call out with music that I thought was what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the Daredevil callback.
Yeah. Well, no, not Daredevil. No, there's another one. No, not even that. It was barely noticeable. It was when the Kevin, the computer, was talking to She-Hulk and mentioned, like, can you please, like, because they've totally obliterated the fourth wall at this point, and he says, can you please, we need you to shrink back down to Jennifer so when we have this conversation. Oh, and can you do it off camera? Because all of our effects artists are currently working on the next Marvel product, and all you hear is a little the drums, and I was like, I pulled like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I was like, Black Panther, and I just thought it was just a cute little moment but you don't even, and even Black Panther has its, it's got some decent. That even doesn't have a huge amount of thematic stuff. It has more thematic rhythms, and thematic, that kind of stuff. So, but you still know it the minute you heard it. The minute you heard it, it was very unique to that. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example I was given. But again, nothing. It doesn't take away from the story by far. It doesn't at all. It's just it's used in a very different way that is fine for the show and it's fine for the story, but it doesn't really do much to. Man, some people disagree. There are people that love the score. They talk like it's the best thing since John Williams, which I'm I don't know. I even Ludwig Göransson, I would be like, and even he escapes some of that stuff too. But I still enjoy. But he still has his moments. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's all.
Well, I mean, let's go predictions. I mean, where do you think it goes from here? In next episode, what do you guys think are some? Do you think next episode we'll? Do you think we're gonna have another reunion with Luthen?
I mean, it could go to something that I could see a couple of things, and again, predictions, not expectations.
Right.
He could send him on another mission. You could the entire second half of this season could be another working its way up to another mission. Could be with a whole different crew. Could be something that they go back to his home planet. There could be simply a cat and mouse thing with the Empire closing in on Luthen and Mon Mothma and all the characters, and kind of Cassian being caught up in the middle of all that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go first, John.
My prediction is I kind of mentioned something about this. Is I think you're going to have an episode where you'll start out with Cassian, going off somewhere, taking that shuttle and leaving, and you'll have very little with Cassian now. I think most of the next episode is going to be flashback. I think you're going to kind of reconnecting and finding. I think you're going to get a big flashback episode.
You also remember he's got to find his sister. He's still looking for his sister. So I don't know where that's going. But you, Garrett?
My thoughts are, I think what we're going to see here is, if we do see any flashbacks, it's going to be something that's tied back to a memory that's triggered by this mission, and something that he recalls that he's maybe repressed and he hasn't thought about in the last 20 years. But my thought on this is that the next few episodes are going to see him trying to get back to or in connection with Luthen, or trying to get to a more safe area. And I think what he's going to be dealing with is Cyril Karn coming back into the picture, because we haven't seen Cyril Karn in like an episode and a half.
Right. He was only at the very beginning of the episode before this one, right?
Yeah. And so we've got Karn, who's obsessing over finding Cassian, and this is a man who is driven by his ego. Like, I mean, the fact that he modified his uniform to make it look a little bit more official, to make it look more imperial, even though he's not an imperial. This guy he's itching for some recognition.
Right.
He feels like bringing down Cassian is going to be the thing that does that for him. And so we're going to have this. This is where we come into the cat and mouse part of the spy story, because the first one, that was the first half has been a heist building up to this heist. We've had the heist. The people that we predicted were going to die died with the surprise of Skeen. Now we're going to be dealing with the real cat and mouse, where Cassian is going to be trying to get back to Luthen, or at least in connection with Luthen, to get to a safe haven. And but it's going to lead him in a direction that's going to connect him with Saw Gerrera, obviously.
Oh, that's right. Saw, that's true.
And I forgot about Saw. And Karn is going to be hot on his trail. Somehow he's going to have figured out, and I think Karn is going to team up with that ISB operative who's looking for the FTL drive.
I like that. I like that. That could certainly he's certainly motivated to do that, Karn.
Yeah.
So it would be a means to an end for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He seems to be like, he's the character that would use other people to his own ends.
That's like the entire Imperial group, though. They all, everything's a means to an end to advance.
You're not wrong.
But that's all right.
So,
I mean,
do you think do you think one of those characters ends up turning good? Do you think? I don't think it's going to be Karn, but do you think the ISB agent that she turns out that she will end up She'll be the third sister of this show. Where in the end she'll turn on the Empire and maybe become a rebel.
I don't see currently any motivation for her to do that.
No.
Like here's the thing. Her whole thing, again, it's not that she is a diehard Imperial. It's not per se. Maybe she is, but we haven't seen too much evidence of that. All she is she's an investigator. She is an investigator.
Well, you could say the same thing about it going back to Rebel. You could say the same thing about Callus at the beginning of Rebels. He had no incentive to join the Rebels.
Yeah, but all I'm saying, John, is that there hasn't been any story to show that she would even care one way or the other.
Yeah.
Whereas with Callus, there wasn't any at first either. But then all of a sudden, there was the minute they started breaking into his backstory, you know that something different might happen. Yeah. Whereas with this one, it's just too soon to tell either way. Right now, all I've seen is someone who wants to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And she sees herself as doing her job, and she wants to do it to the best of her ability. And she's got her assistant who kind of is giving her support.
Now I could see a story with her where the more she digs into what's going on, the more questions she has, and the more she questions, what is the Empire actually doing? I could see a story like that where that could end up being her motivation, as the more she digs into everything that's going on, the more she starts to question her own place, her own, what exactly, this is what I've been told the Empire is doing but in reality, we're seeing that. So I could see a separate storyline with that with her.
It's possible. Go ahead.
I can also see one of the things that pushes her against the Empire is the fact that her supervisor does not give a rip about her.
Yeah.
But two, I think that the other ISB officer that she's in competition with he's going to be a foil for her. And the way that I see this going is there's already a lot of just dramatic tension right there in that particular part of the story, that it could be its own separate thing. It's it's kind of like the House of Cards type element with this show.
Yeah.
Because while the most of this has been like the rebellion and the trying to find a way of hamstringing the Empire in this one system and doing this one heist job, we've got this other side story where you've got this competition between officers. And that's not
right.
I've been watching through Brooklyn Nine-Nine for the first time ever, and you see that happening, that inner agency issue happening where people are competing. If you ever watch the show, there's a character called the Vulture who's a major crimes detective, and he'll just swoop in on any other case by a different precinct and just take credit for it and just take it over.
Wow.
So that's not out of the realm of possibility, especially when you're dealing with something as big as the Empire, where you have something like that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we'll have to wait and see.
We will. All right. Well, this has been a fun, lively discussion. Look forward to episode 7 on Wednesday. Comes out Wednesday, and of course, we will be back here to discuss episode 7 and see if any of our predictions were right or if we were completely off.
Probably a little bit of both when it's all said and done.
Episode 7 will be a musical.
Yeah. I can't wait for the musical version. I love it.
All right. Well, Garrett, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at?
All right. Well, you guys can find me on YouTube. It's youtube.com/c/GKJ Publishing, where I do book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I will be doing a live stream this Saturday starting at 1 p.m. I do all my live streams on Instagram, so you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing. I'm also participating in a fun fundraiser. It really kicks off in November, but I every year I participate in No Shave November, so I'll be growing out my beard. I will no longer be for a month. I will no longer be in limbo. But I'm actually trying to raise money to kick cancer in the balls, both literally and figuratively. I'm partnered up with the Testicular Cancer Society, and so if anyone is interested, they can connect with me, and I can give them that link. And if they want to donate, the cool fun thing is whoever donates the biggest contribution gets to decide what I do with the beard. A couple years ago, the biggest contributor was my dad, and he asked me to dye it pink, and I dyed it bright pink.
Wow.
Nice.
Nice.
All right. Well, Will, what about you? Where can people find you, and what are you up to? You
can find me always on YouTube, Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing channel, Dr. Unboxing Show. Sundays and Wednesdays when I drop main episodes, I'm starting to do a few shorts, meaning I just basically do under a minute unboxing of a quick item. And that's basically where I am at Instagram and Twitter at Darth Tuba on Star Wars Unboxing page on Facebook, or email me at darthtuba77@gmail.com.
All right. As for us, you can find us we are, of course, part of the Red 5 Network, red5network.com for more information. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at warthestars1@gmail.com. It is also our Twitter handle. You can search War of the Stars on Facebook, join our Facebook group. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars, or go to our spreadshirt.com store and just type in War of the Stars and you can catch us there. If you want to listen to the show, we are, of course, broadcast live every week to Facebook Live. But if you're not able to catch us live, you can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. Just go to your favorite podcasting platform and type in War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. You can find us there. With that being said, we will see you all next week. And as always, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
And also with you.